Hello, well, welcome to the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. And as many of you who listen to this will probably do the same as me, I attend a number of networking events around the country. And I was at a networking event approximately a year ago, perhaps a little less, hosted by Mike Southern and Tony Goodwin, which was quite unique and very distinctive. It was hosting a number of remarkable young people who were working with and associated with something called World Merit. And one of the people that was sat on my table, who I had a brilliant conversation with, and I've kind of kept in contact ever since, was Namita Rajesh, who is brilliantly and sensationally with us today. Namita, hello.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you, and I've kind of followed your journey a little bit. Namita, the line isn't particularly good, Namita, I'm afraid. So Namita is talking to us from India. And when I kind of set up these daily podcasts, I thought about who would I like to speak to, and I really was interested to try and get hold of you and just find out how the year has gone. So give us a little bit of background about World Merit and what you've been doing over the last 12 months.
Sure. World Merit is basically, as we mentioned in the gathering in July last year when we met, is essentially this idea that Chris Arnold, the founder, had come up with, which was an online platform for young people who do social work in their individual communities across the globe. A platform for them to interact with one another and come up with projects and other kinds of opportunities to create a global impact. So he calls it Facebook with a focus. So it's sort of like that, the description. Essentially, it's networking for people, young people, to get to know one another. So I joined World Merit sometime in the beginning of 2014. And ever since I joined, it's been really amazing because I get to talk to people from all over the world, from Botswana to the United Kingdom, to the US, to Mexico. And it's really incredible because we talk about all of these issues that happen in our local communities, and we realize how much in common each of these communities have, and yet how diverse these problems are. So it's really fascinating the kind of conversations that happen on the platform. And then as the year progressed, the opportunity for the fellowship program came up, and essentially the idea of the program is to get 24, in our case, 24 young people together and start off with a gathering in the United Kingdom that happened last year in July and August, and divide us into groups of 6 or 7 and give us each a topic area of importance and allow us and give us the resources to create a project that finally has the implementability or the ability to impact people in our local communities as well as have a global reach for that project. So the project that I'm working on, along with some amazing people who are spread out all over the world, from the Netherlands to Brazil, we're a group of 8 people working on gender equality. So that's a project that we've been working on, and we've been meeting almost every week over the past year through Skype and through other online tools, and we have an amazing facilitator called Matthew, who is just the ultimate resource for us for all kinds of issues. And so we get together and we've been creating this project, we've been brainstorming, and we've been coming up with tools and things to use and everything. And the project is almost ready to launch, and we're hopeful that we will do so this month.
So thank you for that, Namita. Just let me go back a little bit. I'm going to come back to that because that was very much a key part of our conversation as to what you were thinking on that. When you were saying about similar problems, when you met all these various people, because I think in the room that day there must have been 10, 15 nationalities. It was extraordinary. Yeah. Is it similar problems, but the challenges to deal with the different cultures of dealing with those problems?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was that the key area for you?
Absolutely was. Even if we take one specific issue, for instance, gender equality, which a lot of us coincidentally were very passionate about when we met, so we sort of connected immediately. We had people come from the Netherlands and from the UK or from Canada, and then we had people like me coming from developing countries, yeah, Pakistan or Bangladesh. And so when we talk about the issues that women face in these different kinds of cultures, it's really interesting because the patriarchy is seemingly everywhere, but the implications of that patriarchy are very different. So for instance, somebody in Canada will prioritize the unequal wages as the top issue that women face. If someone in India, even basic education is a top priority. So wages come in way after that. Women here aren't even allowed to step out of their households, let alone go to work and demand for equal wages as men.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Those are the kinds of issues that we discussed, and those were the kinds of paradigms that we discussed, that although these problems are common, the levels that these problems are at and the way they impact people at the grassroots level is quite different. And yes, the culture aspect of it is very true, because we discussed how differently, so again, someone in Canada, the cultural issues are very different from someone in Pakistan or Bangladesh. So,
And well, you were about to travel all around the world when I met you. I think you were going to Los Angeles and various other places. So it was a true journey, both I'm sure, physically and also for you emotionally and psychologically. But in terms of gender equality, so you've got this diversity. So what is the project? What are you hoping to achieve from the project, and what is it a springboard towards for you or the wider group?
right, so our project is essentially an educational project. So what we're planning to do is launch an online platform which will have video content, audio content, and written content, and all sorts of things, which will give people information about why gender equality exists in the first place. So over the months that we brainstormed the issue and sort of tried to narrow down what our project would be like, in all of those discussions, we sort of found out that the basic premise of the entire thing is that people are generally uninformed. Everybody thinks that they're informed, and there's a sea of information out there on the internet, but everything is misleading. So what we did was use this tool called the causal layer analysis, which again, Matthew, our facilitator, he introduced to us. And what it does is that you look at the existing litany. So take, for instance, anything that's available on the media, on the internet, you look at all the literature that's available, and then you link it with the worldview that that literature has created. And then you go back from that and see the kind of myths and the sort of cultural or religious things that those worldviews have stemmed out of. So it's essentially tracing the steps back and seeing where these things came from. So you could take little issues of, say, stereotypes within the context of gender. For instance, when you say that blue is for boys and pink is for girls, that's the literature that exists, and that's the worldview that it's created. And so if we go back and see where that actually came from, the origins of something like that would be drastically different from what we think that it is. And ultimately, when we get to know those origins, we find out that they're pretty much baseless or archaic and don't really apply to today's context. So we thought that if we made this information easily available to people, then that would help make a lot of people aware and possibly start a better dialogue, because there is a lot of conversation on the internet about gender equality, but it's not very quality conversation.
So you're looking to create a trusted source to some extent of information. And is this online platform aimed at a global audience, or is it going to be geographically specific?
We are aiming it at a global audience, simply because our team itself is very global. Like I said, we're 8 people spread across the world. So we do have the advantage of having information and insight into all those local communities, which we plan on putting up and making it a global platform.
Well, it's an interesting challenge, isn't it? Because the very diversity of the gender inequality that there is makes it, you're going to be catering for very different audiences. But with one overriding message. Interestingly, I've just come back from a holiday, Namita, where I was reading a book called Sapiens, Sapiens, and a large section of that book is all about how the patriarchy was created, where it came from, why it was created, and it said exactly what you just said. Basically, the conclusion was it's completely baseless.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason why it should or could have or needed to happen. But it was allowed to happen, and blah, blah, blah. And you guys will be having much deeper information and an assessment of that. Is there a name for the platform and a date for its launch?
Well, there is a tentative name, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to give it out yet, in case it changes.
Okay. Well, listen, we're going to keep in touch, I hope, and when it is launched, please do tell me, and I'll obviously attach the details to this podcast. And so what is the future for you, Namita? You carry on with this platform, or are you going to be doing something different?
Well, yes. I mean, we did start off this project as just pertaining to the World Merit Fellowship, but as and when we've started working on it, and it's been almost an entire year, we've definitely decided on it being a long-term project that all of us will be carrying forward, simply because it's something that we're all so passionate about.
That's great.
As for me personally, I'll be going to graduate school in the fall, so I'll try to manage the project alongside with the coursework.
Well, listen, I'm absolutely genuine when I say this. There are very few networking events I genuinely remember over the many years, but meeting you and your colleagues was one of those, and that's why I'm so thrilled that you've joined me today. Thanks so much. Good luck, and do send me that link when it's ready, and I will obviously
Thank you
attach
so
it to
much.
this, and I wish you the very best. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. That was the Lawyer Fair Daily Podcast, a really interesting and slightly different one today. Thank you for listening.